Hey folks, my name's Ed Trevors. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm an Anglican priest serving in the beautiful parish of St. Margaret of Scotland that sits on the ancestral and on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, Gwe. There's a lot of talk out there right now about Joe Biden's failures. In particular, people are pointing to two things. The first is the voting rights bills that, as of recording this video, don't look like they're going to make it through the Senate. It looks like the Senate will probably vote them down. The other is the Build Back Better program, which after months and months and months of negotiation and chopping and turning and shifting and revisiting and removing and adding and all the other stuff that politicians do to these bills, was finally shelved in favor of trying to push through the voting rights bills that they're working on. I don't see as how these are both failures. One, I think, is a failure. The other, not at all. In the Bible, I know, surprise, surprise, Jesus offers us a parable, a story. And in this story, I believe he offers us a way of seeing success and failure from a Christian perspective, from a spiritual perspective. It's a really great way of seeing success and failure. It's the story of the 3 bags of gold, right? So the story goes that a rich person's getting ready to go away on a trip. And as they're preparing to leave, they call in 3 of their servants. To one servant, they give 5 bags of gold. To another, they give 2. To the third, they give 1. Now, they go off on their trip. These 3 servants, they take the money and they go off and do what they're supposed to do. When the rich person comes back, the rich person calls the 3 servants forward and says, "What'd you do with my money?" First one says, "Hey, I doubled it. Here's 10 bags of gold." Rich person's thrilled. Says to the second person, "What'd you do with my money?" "I doubled it." Rich person's thrilled. Third person comes forward. "What'd you do with my money?" the rich person asks. Well, the servant says, "I knew you to be a tough one. I knew you to be demanding. I knew you had high expectations, and I did not want to lose what you have given me. So I buried it. Here's your bag of gold back." If we look at this story from the perspective of profit and loss, the first 2 servants, it's easy to say, obviously they succeeded, right? They doubled the money. It's a little more difficult to see the failure of the third servant, though, because at least the money wasn't lost. The rich person isn't down a bag of gold. Why was the rich person then so angry? Well, the rich person was angry because these weren't 3 regular servants, right? These weren't just 3 people that worked in the kitchen or 3 people that emptied chamber pots or 3 people that worked in the vineyard. For the rich person to have chosen to entrust these people with their gold, they must have been trained. They would have spent time with the rich person, with their master. They would have spent time with the person they serve. They would have learned from them. They would have been mentored by them. They would have been coached by them. They would have watched them. They would have witnessed how this master, how this person they serve operates, how they behave, how they invest, how they do business. So when the first 2 come back and say, "Hey, we doubled your money," yeah, the money's great, fine, it's wonderful. You doubled my money, that's brilliant. But what the master, the person they serve, is most thrilled about is that they obviously did things their way. Those servants behaved like the person they serve, like their master. The third servant, however, when they come forward with that bag of gold and said, "I buried it so that I wouldn't lose it," the one they serve, the master, is incensed. They berate the servant. They go up one side of the servant and right down the other side. Not because the servant didn't double the money, but because the servant obviously did not act the way the master would have acted. They did not behave the way the master would have behaved. They did not take the money and use it the way they had been trained to use it, the way they had been taught to use it. That third servant's failure is not the double the money. That third servant's failure is that they didn't follow the leader. They didn't do as they were taught. They didn't live like the person they serve, like those who they served. When I look at Biden's, these two bills from Biden, I don't see as how the Senate not passing the voters' rights bills is his failure. I do not see why this should be seen as a humiliation for him. Yes, it's a failure, and it is a humiliation, but it doesn't belong to President Biden. Anybody who's going to vote against a voters' rights bill and probably the next day stand up and say the United States is the greatest democracy history has ever known, that's their failure. That's their humiliation, not Biden's. On the Build Back Better program, I do see that as Biden's failure because it was never really offered. They tinkered with it. They negotiated over it. He had supper with Sinema. He had supper with Manchin. He schmoozed them. He tried to get them on board. He tried to cut it in places that would make them happy. But the truth is, he never offered it. He never offered it to the Congress. He never offered it to the Senate for it to be rejected. Jesus' offering of success and failure is not a matter that you got what you wanted. It's not a matter that you earned a profit. It's not a matter that you got legislation through a hostile Senate. Success and failure from Jesus' perspective, as we see in this parable that I offered, is a matter of, did you live the way you were instructed to live? Did you operate? Did you behave? Did you do business the way the one you serve would ask you to live and operate and do business? This is how we measure success as a Christian. I can't force the world to go along with my ideas. I can't force the world to go along with my plans. I can't make people get on board with what I'm offering. I don't have that ability. So all I am asked to do as a Christian, as a minister, as a person, is to live with integrity and to be the person that I believe my master is calling me to be the person, to live the way the one I serve is calling me to live. That's all any of us can do. We can't guarantee that everything we do will be successful. All we can do, all anybody can do, whether you're an Anglican priest in Nova Scotia or a teacher in Wisconsin or the Prime Minister of Portugal, we can only do so much. We only have the ability to choose to live the way our Master asks us to live. Everything else is outside of our control. Failure is not that we didn't get what we set out to get. Failure is that we didn't live, we didn't operate, we didn't behave, we didn't do business the way we have been entrusted to live, to operate, to do business. May the Lord bless you, may the Lord keep you, may the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you. May you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray that we can learn from this, that we can let go of some of the stress and anxiety that comes from trying to be successful. That we'll remember all we can really do is to be like the one who sent us. And if we can do that, then that is indeed a life well lived. That's a successful life. Amen. Numultus.